Let's talk about undisputed data and why it has Donald Trump fuming and hoping that corporate media does not emphasize what's actually taking place. Good news in the June inflation report. Inflation actually declined 0.1% in June. That is the first decrease since the pandemic month of May 2020. Gas prices declined in June. Electricity prices declined in June. Rent had its smallest monthly increase, 0.2%, since August of 2021. Also, just 13% of workers in the United States are now earning less than $15 an hour. 2 years ago, that number was 31.9%. Even accounting for inflation, $15 an hour in 2024 has the same buying power as about $14 in 2022. This is remarkable progress. Let's take a look at this graph. GDP has grown faster under President Biden than Donald Trump, regardless of whether you include Trump's COVID losses. Just think about that too. The media gives Donald Trump a mulligan for his disastrous handling of COVID. We're not even supposed to count that year where he said, oh, like a miracle, it's all going to go away. Inject your arm with bleach. But no, we shouldn't count his bad economic data. But even if we don't count it, President Biden's economy is still significantly better than Donald Trump. How about this? The U.S. is now getting more power from wind than coal, and that means jobs. The Infrastructure Act, with over 40,000 projects that are taking place across the country, that means jobs. The Inflation Reduction Act, that means jobs. When I was in Pueblo, Colorado, and met President Biden at a wind turbine factory where they were doubling the jobs there, that's from actual policies. So it's, when you read the New York Times article like this that just came out, a remarkable comeback. This is the kind of thing that we couldn't have dreamed about 5 or 6 years ago. One expert said about changes in some American counties. I wonder where it's coming from. But notice the New York Times won't give President Biden the credit for it, but they act like this just happened in the past 3.5 years. This article goes on to say, America's so-called left behind counties, the once great manufacturing centers and other distressed places that struggled mightily at the start of this century, have staged a remarkable comeback. In the last 3 years, who was president in the last 3 years? In the last 3 years, they added jobs and new businesses at their fastest pace since Bill Clinton was president. Bill Clinton, President Biden, I wonder what they have in common. Maybe they were Democrats. The turnaround has shocked experts. Quote, this is the kind of thing that we couldn't have even dreamed about 5 or 6 years ago. Who was the president 5 or 6 years ago? Said John Lettieri, the president of Economic Innovation Group, a think tank that studies economic distress in the U.S. His group is releasing a report today that details the recovery of left-behind counties. Those counties span the nation but are largely concentrated in the Southeast and Midwest. Actually, in many red states, President Biden's helping them out. In today's newsletter, though, the New York Times said, I'm going to explain how they defied recent trends, including a particularly grim stretch under Donald Trump. Grim stretch meaning they did very bad when he made promises to them that they were going to do good. Is that what you mean by a grim stretch? To rebound so strongly from the pandemic recession. I'll also show that one indicator helps explain why voters there might not reward President Biden for the good news that has happened on his watch. How about because you don't report the good news as good news, and you say, here's why President Biden's policies helping these communities is going to hurt President Biden. Meanwhile, what is Donald Trump doing with all of this data out there that's helping your life and my life and our family's life? With all that data, what's Donald Trump doing? Oh, is he selling more sneakers? Oh, that's what he's doing. Coming soon, everybody. There's new Trump sneakers hitting the market. Take a look at that. Or Donald Trump sending this. I could have gone to prison today. Sick! Exclamation point. I could have gone to prison. Sick, sick, sick. Donald Trump writes. But because of you and the Supreme Court, we won big. And they ran away like dogs with their tails between their legs. They raided my home. They threatened the lives of my family. They used a rigged show trial to label me a felon. Radical left Democrats thought today would be the end of my campaign, but instead we're going to deliver them a humiliating defeat they'll never forget with your help. All I hear and see here is me, my family, me this, me that, whining over and over again. How about this message that Donald Trump sent to people who were on his email list server? Don't worry, I subscribe to this thing so you don't have to. Trump writes, all hell breaks loose in 7 days. That's the subject line at 9:24 a.m. I got this. And the final battle starts in 7 days. He goes, after I accept the nomination next week, the liberation of America truly begins. Think about the language. The liberation of America truly begins. And when it does, I'll need millions of patriots like Ben standing by my side, ready to demolish the deep state and rescue our country from these filthy lunatics. If we are going to take back the White House and fire Biden, it all comes down to you. Just think about the language he's using there. Filthy lunatics, demolish the deep state, the liberation begins. He's very intentionally using this violent rhetoric right there. Oh, and by the way, the other thing that Trump's doing is he continues to deny that he has anything to do with his own Project 2025 policy. How do you know Donald Trump is lying? He opens up his mouth, he wakes up, lies in his sleep, in fact, however. But here he goes, I know nothing about Project 2025. I haven't seen it. I have no idea who's in charge of it. And unlike our very well-received Republican platform, had nothing to do with it at all. Nothing to do with it. I mean, really? Stephen Miller, your top aide, is making ads for it? Caroline Leavitt, your spokesperson, is making ads for Project 2025? Project 2025 is the main sponsor of the Republican National Convention. You've gone out and you've praised the founder of Project 2025 over and over again like this. Here, play this clip.
Heritage Foundation president, somebody else doing an unbelievable job. He's bringing it back to levels it's never seen. Dr. Kevin Roberts. Kevin, thank you, Kevin.
He's then co-signed you and given you credit with the agenda. Play this clip.
We've been working with all of them on one project since soon after Joe Biden took the oath of office, before any conservative presidential candidates had even entered the race. As my friend and colleague Paul Dans before talked about briefly, our Project 2025 has developed a comprehensive policy agenda, but even more importantly, recruiting people, 20,000 people to go into the next administration, hopefully to help take back this country for you and for your audiences. We want no credit. We want the American people, if President Trump is elected again, President Trump and his administration, to take credit for that. But it will also be a great sign, if all of this is successful, that in fact, as we know in our prayer time, but maybe not every time when we're watching the news, that the Lord is still smiling upon America.
By the way, all of your people, all of your top advisors also work for Project 2025, trying to destroy our government, trying to appoint you as a dictator, to take away women's reproductive rights, fully ban IVF. It's the most radical, extreme agenda that there is. Let me just show you the comparison between President Biden's speech and Donald Trump's speech from the very same day. Let's play this clip.
1949, leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
I didn't even know what the hell NATO was too much before, but it didn't take me long to figure it out, like about 2 minutes.
Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. 32 nations strong.
28 countries. 28 countries. Think of that.
We know Putin won't stop at Ukraine, but make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
You know, Ukraine, when you think Ukraine, I had a very good relationship with Putin. We talked about it. It was the apple of his eye.
As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace."
And they said, would you protect us? I said, no, I will not protect you from Russia.
Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion.
When people who love our country protest on January 6th in Washington, they become hostages.
Freedom over tyranny, hope over fear.
If you leave Florida, you end up getting shot, mugged, raped.
This is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world.
Did anyone ever see the lovely movie Silence of the Lambs? Did you see it? Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? He was a lovely man.
Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come.
Yes, oh yes, and quickly, says President Trump. Yes, oh yes.
By the way, as I'm sure you know, President Biden gave a press conference that was pretty successful on Thursday evening. Let me just show you one portion of that press conference so you can see it. Could you ever imagine Donald Trump answering any questions like this? Here, play this clip.
I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not having any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. He'd be a disaster. It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point. And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian.
And by the way, this is from a focus group that was watching the press conference. Let me show you this clip.
Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done, where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball? I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing.
And here's another clip.
Do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, I mean, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why you say, hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
While all of this is going on as well, Donald Trump is meeting with Viktor Orban, the authoritarian leader of Hungary, who had just met with Vladimir Putin. First off, several Russian media outlets reported that Orban and Trump were going to meet. This was before any U.S. media had reported it. And then it was learned, I think Bloomberg and others, that Trump would be meeting with Orban at the same time Biden was speaking on Thursday. But the Russian media had the first scoop of what was going to be happening. Orban meets Putin. Orban flies to Mar-a-Lago. Just and you saw what Donald Trump said about NATO in that speech when I compared him. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Let's focus on the data, folks. Focus on the data.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.